Well, everyone, it's been a year since the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus came out, and we are expecting to get the next iteration of the Samsung Galaxy S series, the S22s, are coming out actually tomorrow. So if you're watching this video, just keep in mind the only thing that's going to change is that instead of buying an S21 Plus brand new, I would recommend buying that S22 Plus. That's probably going to be the better device. It's going to be better in every single area, probably. I mean, it's kind of hard to, be worse than this phone, to be honest. Totally joking. This phone is a beautiful phone, has so much capability, and I'm going to be honest, I think this is one of those phones that's probably going to last for several more years. The original, smaller Galaxy S21, I was kind of a fan of. I mean, there's some things that Samsung did weirdly on that device, but this one, I think Samsung did a pretty good job, and I don't really have too much to complain about besides two things probably. Now, if you want to buy this phone, I'll leave a link in the description. You can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, on the body and on the outside, this phone has still completely held up. It's not an ugly phone. It looks very beautiful. And at that point when it first came out, and even up until now, maybe even up until 4 years from now, it is still going to be one of those devices that's going to look so beautiful next to all other phones probably for this year, to be honest. With the new iPhones, with the new Samsung Galaxy S22 series, any other device that comes out this year, this phone is definitely going to look beautiful. On the front, you have a 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 1080p, and at that point, I thought it looked great, and at this point, it still looks pretty good. Now, they did downgrade it from the 1440p panel of the S20 Plus, which was a very, very weird, but I don't think it's as big of a deal on this phone because it kind of, they did one thing at a time. They did two things that I wasn't really happy about. With the S21, they put a plastic back on that phone and they put a low resolution display. This one, they at least kept the, really premium feeling on the everything else on this phone, but they just downgraded that panel, which I still think looked kind of good for the most part. Even now, it still looks pretty fine. You have a 120Hz display on this as well, which still looks very beautiful. Obviously, it still looks beautiful. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. The only thing I didn't like about this phone in terms of the port selection, it has the USB Type-C port, but it doesn't have a microSD card slot, which is very weird. On this day and age, no phones really have it anymore, but Samsung, one of the best advantages of buying these phones was the microSD card slot, and Samsung axed it pretty much on all their series now, which is very weird except for some A series devices. But last year, or in 2020, Samsung just threw everything they had on those phones. They put a microSD card slot in everything. So that was a very cool thing. They haven't done that since, which is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. There's nothing we can really do about it. Now on the back, we do have this frosted glass back, which still looks very, very beautiful. It is just so good feeling in the hand. And as I mentioned at that point, and as I mentioned now, there's just not that much Samsung can do to improve on this build quality. When I feel this phone, it feels like when I still feel this phone, it feels like a $1,000 phone plus still, and it's over a year old, almost a year old now, which is crazy. So I think this phone looks and feels very good in 2022, but we also have the camera setup on this phone as well. We have a triple camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, 64 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor, and we also have a 10 megapixel front facing camera. Now we can do 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which is really cool. Having that type of capability pretty much future proofs us for a while. I really don't think we're going to be getting 8K on the front really anytime soon, so I think we're going to be straight in that standpoint. So I think we're going to be great in that standpoint. However, we do have the ability of shooting 8K videos on the back, so that's another really cool advantage. Having that ability of 8K already future proofs us like crazy. That's why the Samsung Galaxy S20 series of devices will last much longer than how the software is going to be lasted on it, just because that camera has that capability. It's crazy. For example, Apple still hasn't put that on their phones yet, so we're ahead of the curve on the S21 Plus. Now the camera features, capability, quality, everything like that is superior on the S21 Plus. Like I mentioned with my S21 Ultra video, and Samsung, they just do a great job with their cameras. There was a time where Apple was number one, then Pixel was number one. I think we're in this age where probably Samsung is the number one camera maker. They just make such great lenses. The only unfortunate thing, and it's so sad, and I mention this in every video because I have to be honest, with a lot of these applications like Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, they don't utilize, the raw camera that this phone, has. The camera apps, like the Samsung, stock camera app is really good. I think it's a pretty solid camera lens, but when you look at something like, the Snapchat quality or the TikTok quality on an Android phone, specifically on Samsung's, it's just really not that great. I think it's better than even the Pixels, but it's just not that good of a sensor, and it's very, very unfortunate. So until these app developers start utilizing like the full capability of these cameras, I think Apple is still probably going to be number one for total camera quality. But these ones, if you're making photos and videos in the stock camera app, these are very solid lenses in my opinion. So in terms of the camera quality, thumbs up for me for sure. I mean, this is a very solid camera without a doubt. Now moving on to the longevity, this device is a year old now. It's already gotten Android 12 and it's going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. It's definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. I would say probably another 2 to 3 years of this phone still being somewhat relevant, and then maybe Samsung may actually go ahead and improve the software longevity once more. I don't know if it's a guarantee. It's obviously not a guarantee, but Samsung may just out of nowhere, support this phone for another year of software. We've seen it time and time again from a lot of other phone manufacturers, and I do think Samsung could be one of those people who actually end up doing that, and that would be really awesome. Again, there's no guarantees, but if I were to estimate, I think this could end up happening. So just like how Samsung did in 2020 and in early 2021, I think Samsung could do it again. I mean, all these developers are starting to go ahead and support their phones for a longer duration of time, so who knows what could happen. But in terms of that pretty much covers it up there. Now in terms of the performance side of things, this device has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside of it, an Adreno 660 GPU, and 8 gigs of RAM on both of the models that came out with this phone. And as I mentioned at that point, this phone is still completely relevant in the performance segment, and to even say what I'm about to say is going to be such a reach, but the only thing that's kind of weird about this phone, not even weird, but the only thing that maybe the S22 series and the S21 Ultra is better at is the RAM. I mean, it has 12 and 16 gigs of RAM. This phone has 8, which is still more than enough. In my opinion, 6 gigabytes of RAM, I think like the Pixel 5a has, I think that's more than enough for me as well. So with a phone like this, you're getting great performance, just great stability overall. I can't think of too many situations where something like an S21 Plus is a horrible performing phone at or anything like that. Maybe if you're playing very, very, very heavy intensive games, or if you're trying to edit like super intensive videos, that's the only thing I can even think slightly where this phone may be kind of a little sloppy at. But even that is not that big of a deal because this phone I think can still easily handle it. So when it comes down to something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus, I think this phone is still a great performing device. And as I mentioned at that point, I mean, it's really hard to mess these things up in my opinion. So in terms of the performance, that pretty much covers it up there. And in terms of battery life, I mean, this thing has a 4800 mAh battery. It has wireless charging, reverse wireless charging as well. And this is another one of those devices that I just think Samsung just, put everything they had in their phone at that point, except for a micro SD card slot and maybe except for the 1440p panel. This is still a very good looking phone, and it still has a really good battery life as well, which is another really big advantage for it. So in terms of battery, that covers it up there. And to be completely honest, I think the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus is still completely worth it in 2022. I would highly recommend waiting to see what the S22 has, but also I would recommend kind of waiting for the comparisons and reviews of that phone. If they're already out, then I would recommend watching them. But I'm going to be honest, I think something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus is still a very solid phone, and you can't really go wrong with it in my opinion. Of course, it's not perfect, but I think it's really good without a doubt. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up there. If you guys have any other questions or if you want to purchase this phone, like I mentioned, links will be down in the description. You can get it from there, help support the channel at the same time. Hit the like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.